The whole back.
I've had 10 back surgeries, but the thing is, my knees and my hips are so old now because I had the left knee scoped 3 or 4 times, the right knee scoped 3 or 4 times, then I had them replaced. Then I had the hips replaced, and they're all over 20 years.
Hulk Hogan once said it himself, it wasn't the wrestlers who broke his body, it was the doctors. And now, after his death, fans aren't holding back their anger. Many are blaming the very people who were supposed to save him. Those same doctors, now being called killers by fans, have stepped forward to speak out. And what they revealed about Hogan's final moments is truly shocking. The truth about what Hulk Hogan said before he died has shaken the wrestling world to its core. Everything changed on July 24th, 2025, when news broke that sent shockwaves through generations of fans who grew up chanting, "What you gonna do, brother?" Hulk Hogan, born Terry Jean Balea, passed away at the age of 71 from cardiac arrest at his home in Clearwater, Florida. But what the world didn't immediately know was the deeply personal and heartbreaking story of his final moments' words that revealed the real man behind the mustache, the bandana, and the larger-than-life persona that had captivated millions. The morning of July 24th, 2025, started like any other in Clearwater, Florida, but it became the day that changed how the world remembered one of its most iconic figures. Paramedics tried to revive him for more than 30 minutes, but he was pronounced dead at Morton Plant Hospital at 11:17 a.m. Before his death, Hulk Hogan had become increasingly open about the painful physical toll his wrestling career had taken on his body.
I was at the lowest point of my life. My personal life was destroyed. I was very mad at my daughter. I was upset over a situation.
The wrestling legend revealed that he'd gone through nearly 25 to 26 surgeries in just one decade. These included 10 back surgeries, several knee and hip replacements, shoulder reconstructions, and multiple procedures on his eyes and abdomen. Hogan openly talked about how the rough and unsafe ring conditions of the 1970s and 1980s had caused many of his injuries, describing the rings as hard, uneven platforms with boards sticking out. He showed deep regret over his famous atomic leg drop move, admitting that it badly damaged his spine and wishing he had chosen an easier finishing move like the sleeper hold. But perhaps the most shocking were Hogan's claims of medical malpractice, which he revealed through lawsuits and public statements. In 2013, he filed a $50 million lawsuit against the Laser Spine Institute, accusing them of performing unnecessary and poorly done surgeries that worsened his condition and cost him millions in potential earnings. Hogan also spoke openly about his struggle with failed back surgery syndrome, including a spinal cord stimulator implanted in 2010 that not only failed to ease his pain but caused such unbearable agony that he had to be rushed back to the hospital for emergency treatment. He was also honest about his past use of steroids during wrestling's golden era in the 1980s, admitting this in court and recognizing the long-term damage it may have caused, including heart-related risks that likely played a role in his declining health in his final years. At the time of his death, Hogan was surrounded by his loved ones. A statement on his official Instagram confirmed, "This wasn't a lonely death in a hospital room. This was a man surrounded by the people who mattered most to him." That makes the mystery of his final words even more powerful and emotional. The story of Hogan's last words isn't just about what he said in those final moments, but about the deep mix of relationships, regrets, and reconciliations that shaped the last chapter of his life.
I was to the point where I wanted to kill myself. I sat in my bathroom by myself when my ex-wife was gone and the kids were gone, and I was completely broken and destroyed. And what's the easiest way out of this? I mean, I was lost.
This story doesn't begin with his death, but with the conversations that haunted him, the words he never got to say, and his desperate efforts to rebuild the bridges that years of family conflict had destroyed. To truly understand the weight of Hogan's final conversations, it's important to see the broken state of his family relationships in his last days. Despite his hopes of making peace with his estranged daughter, Brooke, Hogan hadn't spoken to her in 8 years, a painful reality that deeply affected him during his final months.
If anybody should have disowned me, it should have been her. She should have been the one. She should have been the one to throw me out like the trash, but instead she showed me more love than anybody.
This estrangement wasn't just a simple family disagreement. It was a deep divide that grew wider with every passing year, leaving the wrestling legend burdened with one of his greatest regrets. The most emotional and meaningful of Hogan's final conversations didn't happen in his last moments, but months earlier, in September 2023. According to those close to Brooke Hogan, her final conversation with her father took place just 2 weeks before his marriage to Sky Daly. This wasn't just another phone call between a father and daughter. It was a conversation filled with 8 years of silence, pain, and a longing for reconciliation. During that emotional exchange, Brooke voiced her worries about his health, urged him to slow down, and told him she loved him. Hogan, in turn, reportedly apologized to her, though the exact reason behind his apology was never revealed. the weight of this moment cannot be overstated. Here was a man who had battled the biggest names in professional wrestling, who had stood confidently before crowds of 90,000 people, now breaking down and apologizing to his daughter for reasons that remained private between them. This conversation was deeply meaningful, giving Brooke a sense of peace despite their 8 years of separation. The fact that she found comfort in those words says everything about how real and heartfelt they were. This wasn't the scripted talk of a wrestling promo or the rehearsed lines of a reality show. This was Terry Bollea, the father, speaking from his heart to the daughter he had lost along the way.
Well, there's a couple Americans there that Trump loves that we've been talking business with, so...
Oh, wrestlers fights. WWE.
WWE. Yeah, okay.
Is there any wrestlers that...
No, there's so...
The cruel irony of it all becomes painfully clear when we learn how Brooke found out about her father's death. She didn't receive a phone call, nor did she hear it from the media. She learned the news through a text message from her brother Nick, sent to her husband, Stephen Alexi. Imagine the heartbreak of discovering your father's passing through a forwarded text. A moment that highlights the depth of their estrangement and the years of lost time that could never be reclaimed. But Hogan's final conversations weren't just about his strained relationship with Brooke. His son Nick, who had stayed much closer to him, offered a different view of Hogan's last moments. After his father's death, Nick Hogan shared a heartfelt tribute, calling him his hero, mentor, and best friend. While he didn't reveal his father's exact last words, his message reflected the strong bond they shared, showing a side of Hogan that, despite his flaws, remained deeply devoted to at least one of his children. The bond between Hogan and Nick carried a special meaning in those final days. Nick's tribute suggested that their last moments together were filled with love and respect, including a karaoke night with Jimmy Hart just 2 days before Hogan's death. What might seem like a simple night out was, in truth, something deeply meaningful. A father and son sharing music, laughter, and genuine connection only 48 hours before everything changed forever. Hogan's conversations with his closest friends painted an equally emotional picture of his final state of mind. Jimmy Hart, his longtime friend and former manager, called him on July 23, 2025, the day before his passing. Hart spoke with Hogan's assistant, who assured him that Hogan was doing fine. Hart's only message back was simple but heartfelt. "Tell him I love him." Even in his last days, Hogan stayed involved in his business ventures, giving a glimpse into his final professional thoughts. On July 22, 2025, he spoke with enthusiasm about his Real American Freestyle Wrestling project, saying, "Real American Freestyle is creating something that's never been done before, and we needed a partner who understands that and can build with us. Fox Nation fits perfectly with our brand. They value bringing this sport to the masses and share our vision." Those words, spoken just 2 days before his death, may have been among his last public statements, a reflection of a man still chasing his dreams until the very end.
You gotta outthink the office, you gotta outthink the business, you gotta outthink the company. And once you get on that level, you've gotta make your own breaks.
In what turned out to be one of his final interviews, Hogan's passion for wrestling still burned brightly. When he spoke about the new generation of talent and the future of the sport, his excitement was unmistakable. Despite all the pain, regrets, and personal struggles he had endured, his love for the business that made him a global icon never faded. It remained a defining part of who he was until the very end.
A racist.
No, I'm not. I'm not a racist. I never should have said what I said. It was wrong. I'm embarrassed by it. But a lot of people need to realize that you inherit things from your environment.
According to insiders, Hogan knew his time was running out due to his worsening heart problems, and he spent his final weeks trying to make peace and say goodbye to those he cared about, even though he never managed to reconcile with Brooke. His longtime friend and business partner Eric Bischoff visited him about 2 weeks before his death and recalled that Hogan looked weak, showing clear signs of his health decline. But that weakness wasn't only physical, it was emotional and spiritual as well. His wife, Sky Daly, worked tirelessly to protect his privacy and dignity in those last days, shutting down rumors and handling public attention with care, proving she truly understood both the legend and the man behind it. The timing of Hogan's death added an even deeper sense of tragedy. Jimmy Hart noted how sudden it all was, saying, "It just happened overnight, but he was so positive the day before." To truly understand who Hulk Hogan was, we have to look back at his life, the man behind the mustache. When you think of professional wrestling, one name stands above all others like a towering, yellow-mustached icon, Hulk Hogan. His story began in 1977, not with the famous sound of Real American echoing through arenas, but in the humid wrestling territories of Florida, where a young Terry Bollea worked tirelessly under names like Super Destroyer and Terry Boulder, chasing a dream that would soon make him a legend. These were the days before wrestlers had big contracts or private jets, when they drove hundreds of miles for a $20 payday and shared cramped motel rooms just to get by. The transformation from Terry Bollea to Hulk Hogan felt like something straight out of a comic book origin story. The name Hulk came after he appeared on a television show alongside Lou Ferrigno, the star of The Incredible Hulk, where Hogan's huge frame made even the bodybuilder-turned-actor look small. WWE owner Vince McMahon later added the surname Hogan, giving him an Irish-sounding name that would eventually become more American than apple pie. But Hogan's rise to fame wasn't smooth or immediate. After his first short run with the World Wrestling Federation in 1979, he spent time in the American Wrestling Association and New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he won the original IWGP Heavyweight Championship. Those years were critical in shaping the larger-than-life character that would soon take over the world, a mix of raw charisma, unmatched presence, and a near-magical ability to connect with audiences of every age. When Hogan returned to the WWF in 1983, what followed was nothing short of revolutionary. His all-American hero persona didn't just attract fans, it ignited Hulkamania, a pop culture explosion that went far beyond the world of wrestling. Hulkamania didn't just take over wrestling, it exploded into mainstream culture with the force of a nuclear blast. The moment that changed everything came in 1984, when Hogan defeated the Iron Sheik to win the WWF Championship. But this wasn't just another title victory, it marked the birth of modern sports entertainment. Hogan held that championship for more than 4 years, the second longest reign in the title's history, during which he evolved from a wrestler into a full-fledged cultural icon. The numbers from that era are nothing short of astonishing. He headlined 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias, helping turn Vince McMahon's risky dream into the most successful wrestling event series ever created. The peak came at WrestleMania 30 in 1987, where his legendary showdown with Andre the Giant drew a record 93,173 fans, a spectacle that still stands as one of the most watched wrestling matches in history. Even on television, Hogan was unmatched. His 1988 bout on WWF, the main event, set a US viewership record with 33 million viewers numbers that would make today's TV executives ecstatic. This wasn't just wrestling anymore, it was must-watch entertainment that brought families together across America. Then, in 1996, Hogan reinvented himself once again, shocking the world by turning heel and becoming the villainous Hollywood Hogan, leading the infamous New World Order, NWO, alongside Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Hogan's heel turn was so shocking and flawlessly executed that it completely changed the course of professional wrestling. Fans who had adored him for more than a decade suddenly found themselves booing and even throwing trash at the man they once called their hero. That raw sense of betrayal became the emotional fuel for WCW's most successful era. During his time there, Hogan won the WCW Championship 6 times, including the longest reign in the company's history. He headlined WCW's biggest event, Starrcade, several times with the 1997 show, standing out as both financially and historically significant. The success was undeniable. WCW was earning record profits, and Hogan was the driving force behind it. Yet, even in this golden period, the roots of future controversies were already taking hold. Hogan's infamous creative control over his storylines became both legendary and destructive. His ego and his refusal to lose certain matches began to alienate fellow wrestlers and even some fans. The most infamous example came in 2000, when he refused to lose to Jeff Jarrett, a decision that sparked a furious on-air rant from Vince Russo, violated Hogan's contract, and led to a lawsuit that contributed to WCW's downfall. Beneath all the fame, money, and success, however, Hogan's personal life was quietly collapsing, setting the stage for a period of chaos and heartbreak. The controversies that would soon eclipse Hogan's legendary career were gathering like a perfect storm, threatening to destroy everything he had built over 4 decades in the spotlight. In 2012, the gossip site Gawker published a 9-second clip from a 2007 sex tape showing Hogan with Heather Clem, the wife of his close friend Bubba the Love Sponge. The shocking part wasn't just the affair, it was that Hogan had been secretly recorded without his knowledge. The legal battle that followed became one of the most talked about press freedom cases of the decade. Hogan filed a $100 million lawsuit against Gawker, accusing them of invading his privacy. What the public didn't know at the time was that tech billionaire Peter Thiel was secretly funding Hogan's case as part of his personal vendetta against Gawker. The lawsuit ignited fierce debate over press freedom versus personal privacy. And in the end, Hogan won a $140 million judgment, later settled for $31 million, a victory that completely bankrupted Gawker. But while Hogan won in court, the personal toll was devastating. The trial exposed painful details about his life, revealing a man whose world behind the cameras was crumbling friendships built on shaky ground, trust betrayed, and a growing divide between the heroic image of Hulk Hogan and the flawed man behind it. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Hogan was repeatedly accused of using steroids during his time in the WWF. At first, he denied the claims, trying to preserve the clean-cut image that made him a hero to millions of children. But eventually, he admitted to using steroids, a confession that shattered his wholesome reputation and brought even more attention to the growing concerns about wrestling's health and safety practices. The issue became national news during Vince McMahon's 1994 steroid trial, where Hogan took the stand and confirmed what many had long suspected. His admission not only damaged his own credibility, but also cast a long shadow over the entire wrestling industry, already under scrutiny from regulators and concerned parents. One of the most controversial and damaging revelations about Hogan's character came from his role in stopping early attempts at wrestler unionization. In 1984, he reportedly informed Vince McMahon about Jesse Ventura's secret plan to form a wrestlers' union, effectively shutting it down before it could begin. The betrayal was devastating, especially because Ventura had been both a close friend and a trusted ally. The incident left a lasting rift between them and sparked years of criticism toward Hogan for undermining wrestlers' rights, at a time when they desperately needed protection. Yet even all of these controversies paled in comparison to the scandal that almost erased his legacy entirely. In 2015, a leaked transcript from the 2007 sex tape revealed Hogan using the N-word multiple times while talking about his daughter Brooke's dating life. The context made it worse. He was expressing discomfort over her dating a black man and even said, "I am a racist," to a point.
Okay, here's the deal. There's two Vince McMahons. The first Vince McMahon, on a personal level, would give you the shirt off his back. If I called Vince McMahon and I said, I can't pay my house payments, I got a problem, he would be there like that. The other Vince McMahon is the businessman, and there's nothing personal at all. It's either good for him business-wise, or it's not.
The revelations didn't stop there. More racist comments surfaced from 2008 jailhouse calls between Hogan and his son Nick, revealing that the language wasn't an isolated lapse, but part of a deeper pattern. WWE responded swiftly and decisively, terminating his contract, removing him from the Hall of Fame, and erasing his presence from their platforms. It was a stunning fall from grace for the man who had once carried the company on his shoulders. Hogan's public apology in an interview with ABC's Amy Robach, where he admitted his words were unacceptable and claimed they didn't reflect his true beliefs, did little to repair his image. For many, the damage was irreversible. His death years later was met not with universal mourning, but reflection on how a beloved hero became a cautionary tale about fame, hypocrisy, and the persistence of racism. And at the center of his story, through triumph and downfall alike, stood his most complex and defining relationship, the volatile, brotherly, and often destructive bond he shared with WWE owner Vince McMahon.
Well, I was almost shocked because he was one of those guys who was larger than life. You just assumed, and he didn't appear to age. So you never thought that the last time you saw Hulk Hogan would be the final time you saw Hulk Hogan.
This insight into McMahon's dual nature reveals much about the wrestling business itself, and about Hogan's complicated place within it. Their relationship was one of mutual dependence, built on a shared vision of turning wrestling into global entertainment, yet fractured by ego, betrayal, and power. Together, they revolutionized the industry, but their bond also reflected the darker side of that success: the exploitation, the manipulation, and the moral compromises made in pursuit of fame. As the world reacts to Hulk Hogan's death, the debate over his legacy intensifies. Was he the ultimate showman who inspired generations, or a flawed man whose actions betrayed the very ideals he represented? The truth lies somewhere in between. Greatness in one arena does not erase failure in another, and Hogan's story stands as both a celebration of triumph and a cautionary tale of how the pursuit of immortality and fame can ultimately consume the man behind the legend. The immediate reaction to Hogan's death was nothing short of seismic. Major outlets like TMZ, ESPN, and the New York Times confirmed his passing, citing cardiac arrest as the cause. But beyond the headlines, the emotional wave that swept across social media painted a deeper picture of his cultural reach. Platforms like X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube were flooded with tributes, memories, and reaction videos from fans who had grown up idolizing the man who told them to train, say their prayers, and eat their vitamins. Within hours, the wrestling world united in mourning. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's heartfelt tribute, calling Hogan a childhood hero and a trailblazer who made it possible for wrestlers to conquer Hollywood, echoed the gratitude of an entire generation. Even outside wrestling, figures like George Foreman weighed in, stating, "I do not condone the language he used, but he is no racist, he is a good guy." That sentiment reflected the conflicted emotions of many acknowledging both the man's mistakes and his humanity. The digital age amplified this global mourning, with live streams, podcasts, and fan reaction panels emerging within hours. These weren't corporate eulogies. They were raw, personal reflections, proof that, for better or worse, Hulk Hogan's impact transcended wrestling, touching the lives of millions who felt they knew the man behind the mustache. They were raw, emotional responses from ordinary people whose lives had been shaped by Hogan's larger-than-life presence. Notable reaction videos on X, formerly Twitter, included posts from a Frank Too Funny, who shared his emotional reaction to Hogan's passing, Flozer 10 Count Steve, who posted a heartfelt Hulk Hogan passes away tribute, and Sean Mooney, who offered an immediate, somber reflection on the loss of one of wrestling's biggest icons. Even or NoDQ.com hosted a live panel discussion capturing the shock and sadness within the wrestling community. These videos, many garnering thousands of views within hours, reflected a collective mourning that transcended demographics or geography. The engagement metrics from hundreds of comments to thousands of views and dozens of reposts weren't just numbers. They were digital expressions of grief, showing how deeply Hogan's story had woven itself into the lives of fans. This wasn't casual nostalgia, it was a shared moment of loss for a man who had loomed large over pop culture for nearly 5 decades. Beyond wrestling circles, the entertainment world joined in. Celebrities, athletes, and media figures from film stars to musicians added their voices to the chorus of remembrance, with even mainstream outlets like Fox News posting tributes that underscored just how far-reaching Hulk Hogan's cultural footprint truly was. Outlets like Amir Celeb reported that Hogan's family took solace in the wonderful memories he left behind for millions of fans worldwide. Tributes poured in from across the globe, from WWE superstars and Hollywood actors to athletes in other sports, reflecting how Hogan had transcended wrestling to become a true cultural icon. Within the wrestling world, current stars shared heartfelt memories of how Hogan's charisma and passion inspired them to pursue their own dreams, while fans across social media mourned the loss of the man who defined an era. In their official statement, shared on X, formerly Twitter, Hogan's family expressed gratitude for the overwhelming support and revealed that he passed away peacefully, surrounded by loved ones, a poignant ending to a life defined by both triumph and turbulence, and a reminder that even in his final moments, Hulk Hogan remained a figure who united millions through his enduring legacy. Brooke Hogan's tribute, featuring a heartfelt poem that read, "If you knew the dad I knew, you'd know he raised me well. He taught me folks are so much more than shades could ever tell," was especially moving given their years of estrangement. Despite the pain and distance that defined much of their relationship, Brooke chose to remember her father through compassion and gratitude, highlighting the lessons he imparted rather than the wounds left behind. This public gesture served as a quiet reconciliation, one that life had denied them, but death seemed to allow. Within the wrestling world, Hogan's passing sparked deep reflection on his monumental influence. Industry veterans and historians pointed to his 14 world championships, his headlining of 8 of the first 9 WrestleManias, and his pivotal role in the Monday Night Wars as testaments to his unparalleled impact on sports entertainment. Colleagues and successors alike acknowledged that Hogan had not only helped legitimize professional wrestling, but had also transformed it into a global spectacle, paving the way for generations that followed. While discussions also revisited the controversies that shadowed his later years, even his critics conceded that his influence on the wrestling business and on popular culture as a whole was impossible to deny. This nuanced reflection on Hogan's legacy captured the complexity of a man who was both deeply flawed and profoundly influential. The tributes demonstrated a mature understanding that public figures can be simultaneously inspirational and imperfect. Publications like The Sportster and Rotten Tomatoes highlighted the full spectrum of Hogan's cultural impact, from his explosive rise during Hulkamania to his crossover success in films like Rocky III and Reality. TV with Hogan Knows Best. He wasn't just a wrestler, he was one of the first athletes to truly master the art of self-branding, showing that sports figures could thrive across entertainment platforms. His estimated $25 million net worth in 2021 reflected not only his personal success, but also his role in shaping wrestling as a billion-dollar global industry. Hogan's ventures helped redefine what was possible for wrestlers beyond the ring, paving the way for modern multimedia stars. Yet perhaps the most touching tributes focused on his later life attempts at redemption, his faith, baptism, and renewed commitment to humility. For many, these efforts showed a man who had finally found peace after decades of chaos. In the end, the question Hogan had posed to the world, "What you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild on you?" seemed to find its answer in his final years. He chose reflection, reconciliation, and faith. Not in the roar of the crowd or the flash of cameras, but in the quiet presence of loved ones, Hulk Hogan found his final peace. His last words were not an ending, but a transition from the voice of a living legend to the eternal echo of a life fully lived. Though the man known as Terry Bollea passed away on July 24th, 2025, the legend of Hulk Hogan lives on in every chant, every memory, and every lesson from his extraordinary journey. The tributes and reactions that followed his death proved one thing: legends never truly die. They transform from flesh and blood into memory and inspiration, living on in the hearts of those they touched. Hulk Hogan's death marked not the end, but the beginning of his transformation from mortal man to immortal icon, his story forever reminding us that even the greatest heroes are, in the end, beautifully human.